Hello, it's Ren Presents time. I'm your host, Ren, and today we continue with the Belmont Saga, Part 3, Chapter 10. Hallo, boys! So, last week, Paymaster Stenstrom discovers the Kestrel's dock, or I should say, at this point, the Drury's dock, at the end of a 4-mile corridor. In the dock is a great deal of gantries, offices, mezzanines, robotic arms, and, best of all, the Demophalon John, what's left of it, and the Seeker. We find out that the Drurys, during Stenstrom's recon mission, the Drurys are under the sway of two Kestrels who were cut off when the Temple of the Exploding Head was destroyed, so they're not able to reach their fastness in the future. They're stuck here, and they're two powerful shapeshifters, the Kestrels. And I always try to make aliens. You don't see aliens too often in my books, but when you do, they are just that, aliens. It's not like Star Trek, where they've got an alien is pretty much a humanoid with a little bump on their nose or weird ears, and their thought patterns are the same, their logic is the same, their sense of morality, for the most part, with some notable exceptions, is the same. My aliens are always just that weird. Their thoughts are unknowable, their logic seemingly erratic. We get the idea that a lot of what they do is to propagate. They need brood stock for their children, and their children, it's brutal because they lay their basically eggs on captured people who are in stasis. And when they come out and they hatch, they take the shape of whoever they're attached to, and that's their initial shape. And they have to make their way to this central pyramid where they take sustenance from gods that have been captured there. And on their way, they're under attack from other Kestrels, and only just a scant few of these Kestrel birthlings make it to the central pyramid and attach to a god and then hibernate or gestate for who knows how long. They're unknowable. What they want is unclear. It seems sinister, but who knows? So these Kestrels are there. The Drurys are fixing up the Seeker to take these Kestrels on a long mission in space, because apparently maybe somewhere out there in the cosmos is a second or third temporal anchor point that they can use to get back home. They want to go home. I mean, it's understandable. I guess that's the most clear thing. Stenstrom sees that they're taking apart the Demophalon John and using its metal to fashion a pair of what look like Zaffin Cassegrain engines, very different type of propulsion than what the League uses, to attach to the Seeker for this mission. He also sees how the Drurys replicate themselves, and he starts messing about, trying to disrupt the operation. He takes down a few Drurys, and he sees they almost instantly are replaced. There's a lot of Drurys down there. Chance Drury, who's like the queen bee, there's only one of him. He says, we're gonna accelerate the soak of the Trogs. It's Gwendolyn's crew and the Marians, and we're gonna turn them into freaking Kalanju deckhands, gross and gripping for their Kestrel masters, and they need food. And what luck, there's gonna be a little transport full of children bouncing down the lanes from Cana to Onaris, and they're fixing to get those children and process them so that the Kestrels can devour them along the way. Obviously, Paymaster Stenstrom is going to try to thwart this as best he can. He sneaks aboard the ship, gets food and some gasol, and if you don't know what gasol is, it's my version of a soft drink. Basically, it's like a kid's drink. It's fizzy, it comes in different colors. He brings it back and fills everybody in on what's going on, and then Gwendolyn has a great idea, like, hey, the Drurys have done the hard part. They've removed the stellar mock coils from the Demophalon John, which is very difficult. Since they're out, we can take these coils and mount them on the Seeker relatively quickly. And they're not powerful enough to sustain the Seeker for a long period of time, but again, they're right in the heart of the League, just a short distance from Cana or Onaris or Baz, and that would give them power for their communication so they could call for help if they need to. So their plan is to put some of these coils on their ship. Problem is, there's Drurys everywhere. So Stenstrom says, well, Aram, you lead the people onto the ship. They've got their Marion's necklaces, which is supposed to shield them from evil sight. So Maybe that'll work if their faith is restored. Gwendolyn is going to lead a contingent of several crewmen to select these coils and get them on the Seeker, and Tara's going to try to figure out these mechanical arms that they're going to need to lift these coils, and then Stenstrom is going to make a diversion, draw the Drurys to him, and then essentially sacrifice himself. He doesn't really have a plan how he's going to get what's going to happen after that. So with this situation in mind, let's proceed. Chapter 10. Hello, boys. Gonna be some doings in this one, that I promise you. Stenstrom easily made his way back to the dock area. He climbed up to a high perch with a commanding view and assessed the situation. Down below, he saw the two vessels. Many of the robotic arms he damaged around the Demophalon John still appeared to be down. Several Lemuels in attendance at the far end of the dock labored to fix them. Stenstrom noted they were having significant issues opening the maintenance panels, and a few had been greatly mangled. Some were scorched by hot flames. In front of the Demophalon John, the treaded cart carrying the coils had toppled over. They were stacked up 4 high nearby, and a Lemuel was lying on his back trying to fix the cart, a surly Clem watching. Chance Drury and the Kestrels were not in sight, and the Seeker appeared to be rather forgotten for the moment. Well, he thought, no need to delay. He drew his Ents, cocked the hammers, and lined up a shot on Lemuel. Stenstrom hit him in the chest. He kicked out with his legs once or twice, dropped his tools, and went still. Clem appeared to take no notice. He kept right on yelling at the now dead Lemuel. Stenstrom cocked again and got Clem in the back. He dropped into a sort of kneeling position and then fell into full prayer before the feet of the dead Lemuel. 2 Drurys down. At this point, the docks were fairly clear. He saw Tara, Gwendolyn, and several of her crew sneaking towards the Demophalon John. He saw 2 people waft onto the port wing of the Seeker. Good creation! An innocent was walking in their direction. They saw him and tried to take cover near the water's edge. He stopped and turned, having heard them. Gwendolyn somehow got behind him and with weapon drawn sliced his head off with her rapier-like fedula, a weapon that appeared to do a lot more damage than a light rapier-like sword should be able to do. Innocent pranced around headless, his array of antennae sprouting from his neck cavity. Stenstrom lined him up and fired, getting him in the chest where he fell. Gwendolyn and her team then, together, worked to hide his dead, heavy body. They roughly rolled him into the water with a plop. Looking around, he saw the going clear as Tara began on one of the working robotic arms. Good thing he didn't sabotage them all. They had the panel open and Tara was plunged into it, her red marine coattails and the butt of her SK sticking out of the panel as she worked. He could see the lofty arm overhead swinging about in little jerky stages as she fiddled with it. The action on the dock so far had been an anticlimax. Stenstrom had expected nothing less than a chaotic melee on the docks. He had been anticipating slaughtering the Drurys wholesale, and he readied himself for it. So far, the Drurys were taken completely by surprise. Tara appeared to have success. The robotic arm swung down under full control, extended and descended to the rear hull of the Seeker. Working in concert with the crew standing on the wing, the arm opened the Stellar Mach vent coverings. The genius of Straylight design allowed the vents to be opened from the outside in a dry dock situation, or be shut, locked, and accessed from within. The vents swung open like the cover of a book. It took only a minute or two. Next, Tara swung the arm down to dock level. Gwendolyn, still holding her fedula, approached the stack of coils and inspected them. She turned and said something to Tara. The huge towering arm came gently down. Per Gwendolyn's direction, Tara lifted off the coil stacked on top and set it aside. She then picked up the one that had been underneath it and turned it around, showing it to Gwendolyn, who carefully looked it over. Approving, Tara then hoisted it up, swung it over, and carefully placed it into position in Stellar Mach 6. She then gently closed the SM vent. Tara brought the arm back down to the dock. Gwendolyn dismissed the next coil, settling on the bottom one. Tara lifted it, showed it to her, and then hoisted it up. "What's going on?" came a loud voice from below. There was innocent Drury on fast approach. Creation Stenstrom had become mesmerized with watching the loading of the coils. "Who are you?" he cried as Gwendolyn faced him with her fedula. Stenstrom aimed and fired. He missed. 3 Lemuels appeared from their work and proceeded to that area of the dock at a run. Stenstrom cocked and fired, getting one, and then another. They fell hard, tumbling into the water with a rough splash. Tara, using the robotic arm, swung it over and, still holding the coil, squashed the 3rd Lemuel roughly to the dock, little blue square skittering away from his flattened body. Gwendolyn and Innocent were in close quarters and Stenstrom couldn't fire without possibly hitting her. She dropped her fedula and got behind him, using wrestling holds and grappling techniques to neutralize his considerable strength advantage. They fell to the floor. Such a mismatch couldn't last, and Innocent managed to pry her off of him. He got her down and then raised his arm to hit her. Such a blow would be her death. He was knocked back a few steps. Tara unloaded a silence burst from her SK into his chest, and he toppled away from Gwendolyn. Clear, Stenstrom fired and got him in the back, dropping him. Some of the crew came out of their hiding places and helped Gwendolyn, while Tara quickly swung the coil over to the Seeker, dropped it into SM position 13, and then closed the vent. That done, Tara brought the arm back down to the dock and positioned its massive fingers in a loose fist where the crew climbed in and secured themselves. Gwendolyn and Tara joined them. Tara looked up in motion for Stenstrom to come down and join them as well. And then they froze. Chance Drury appeared, followed by 5 Clems and an Innocent. They looked at the group huddled in the fingers of the robotic arm. Stenstrom acted. "Hello, boys!" he shouted loudly. "Did you miss me?" All heads turned to him. Chance smiled a bit. "I assume I am speaking to Paymaster Stenstrom of the Seeker. Jesu collect?" Chance said in a clear voice. "Aye." Chance considered his response. "What are you hoping to accomplish here, good sir? You must know you are in a desperate situation for you and your people here. This docking bay is the pit of hell. Usted que Maria in ella? Ah? Is it? You were good enough to pay me a visit, so I thought I'd respond in kind." Out of the corner of his eye, Stenstrom thought he could see a line of people moving towards the Seeker. They were difficult to see, invisible almost. The Marian's belt. They must be able to move invisibly when they wish, and their faith was untested. Stenstrom had to keep the Drurys occupied. This was the critical moment. "You feel like dying today, Chance? You know I'm going to kill you, right?" He laughed. "You do not seem to understand. We are eternal. We cannot be put to ground. Our hearts cannot be stopped. Our voices cannot be silenced. Besser el si abin vesuch. But you already are put to the ground, Dust Eater. You are dead, long dead, tainting the earth somewhere with your foulness. And I'll wager all the worms that had the misfortune to feed upon your carcasses probably died of a stomachache. You and your 3 uncouth brothers died 400 years ago, and even when you were alive, you weren't really men, were you? You were cowering jackals, feasting on the weak and the helpless while tucking tail and running full flight from anyone who showed an ounce of strength. Now look at you. Nothing more than a bit of bad data, imprinted and downloaded. You are 4 tin cans playing at being men, dreaming of foul things, and I am going to see you to an end once and for all. Chance had a good chuckle. Sestron fight? That bipedal flesh and blood lung sack you're wearing is overrated in my mind. And let's be honest, you are just as much a robot as I am. He glanced at the people in the robotic arm. Are these your fellows here, your devotees? They must be. I am going to order them abused. Voila! and then order them slain right now, all while you watch. Clem, fetch that lot. The robotic arm suddenly began moving all by itself. Tara apparently prepared a pre-recorded sequence for the arms to follow. The arm lifted them high into the air and swung them over the seeker. Chance, quick as could be, worked his hand and created a long lance of yellow squares. Before Stenstrom could act, he hurled the lance at the robotic arm, its tail fire lighting in midair. The people cradled in the arm's fist jumped out and fell onto the seeker's wing, just as the lance struck the arm and exploded like a missile, rocking the arm on its long mount. Stenstrom lined up his guns and fired. Missed! Chance ducked away. He fired again, going for Chance as the Clems and Innocent moved about in confusion. Chance was a slippery customer and appeared to guard his existence carefully. He ducked, moved away, ducked again, allowing Clem to take one for him in the chest. Ah! Chance was cornered by the pier, his head swiveling in fright. Stenstrom cocked, aimed, and fired. The hammer fell. Nothing happened. Damn! The Cinnabar striker was cracked. He aimed with the other pistol and fired, getting Innocent. Chance made a break for it. He ripped out of his clothes on the run, assuming his blocky robotic form, his cluster of yellow squares buzzing about in an agitated state on his robotic frame. Stenstrom replaced his striker with a fresh cinnabar from his coat and resumed firing. He hit Chance in the arm and again in the shoulder. Yellow squares fell away. Again in this decentralized form, the Nth couldn't kill him at a shot. Chance stopped and formed two long lances of yellow squares. He then hurled them in Stenstrom's direction. He could see the tips of the lances blinking in their heat trails as they honed in on him. He hauled himself over the side and plummeted as the lances exploded above him. "He's there! He's there!" Chance yelled in a robotic voice. Clems, Innocents, and a horde of Lemuels poured onto the dock from all quarters. Stenstrom returned to the shadows. He gunned down one Drury after the next, the dock quickly becoming littered with their fallen bodies. Colorful squares of red, green, and blue, like children's blocks, mingled together. "Where'd he go?" Clem cried. "Use your antennas, you ponderous slugs!" Chance roared in his robotic voice. "Find him! Kill him!" Of all the Druries, Chance seemed the most at peace with being a robot, while the others appeared to prefer to stay man-shaped, as if to convince themselves that they really were men and not robots. Several Innocents expanded into pulsating green masses, their head screens unfurling and antennae popping out. "There he is!" Innocent screamed, his clusters of antennae turning in Stenstrom's direction. Stenstrom fired at his head screen where it immediately went dead. Innocent staggered about and fell, his green squares abandoning his body frame like rats from a sinking ship. Behind them, Stenstrom saw, just for a moment, the main sensor on the Seeker light up and then snap back off. "Come on, Gwendolyn, get that ship working." He continued his barrage. The Druries were falling like lead weights. There was an angry clamor from behind him. Druries were now pouring out of the assembly area. Some were clothed, others nude, some were in their robotic shape. Additionally, the tiny squares fleeing the Druries whom he blinded were coming together in a colonial fashion, forming rudimentary inchworm-like constructs of red, blue, and green squares. Stenstrom saw several of the inchworms forming on the dock. "Ay, chingao! Do not allow the rogue cells to form together. They might create an intellidrone," Chance cried. Some of the Drury ceased their attack and began stepping on the inchworms and pulling them apart. A Clem picked up a particularly large one, its tail wrapping around his neck. Stenstrom fired, killing Clem, where he and the colorful worm-like robot fell into the water. The caustic scene Stenstrom had envisioned had finally arrived. Druries were everywhere. They were all spoiling for his hide. The dock filling with the sounds of cursing, splashing, slapping metallic feet, and booming explosions. But, as he had hoped, all eyes were on him. The Seeker was clear, and his people were aboard. Chance and 10 Clems appeared to be directing the action from the rear. The Clems were creating a steady stream of red, lance-like missiles and were firing them off in quick style. Explosions blossomed. Stenstrom could not stay where he was. He gunned down 2 naked Clems and made his way towards the Mophilon John. He climbed the side and got on top of it, raining shots down on them. Fired lances came back up in answer, where they exploded against the side of the ship, the sturdy ship able to ward off the brunt of the explosions. Lemuels climbed up after him. He gunned them back down. They stubbornly clung to their manned shape, which he could kill with a shot. Several robotic Clems came up, all blocky and red, and he shot their head screens, blinding them, their squares scattering off and falling into the water. Stenstrom was cornered. Druries everywhere, a steady barrage of missiles incoming. There wasn't much left for him to do but plunge into the water and start swimming. He jumped, seeing a long fall in front of him. Something seized him by the coat, and he was hauled back up, spun overhead, and slammed to the hull. Things spun. He thought he could see a Lemuel standing over him, the hem of his coat in his hand. Stenstrom raised and fired, hitting Lemuel in the gut where he dropped. A Clem fell on him. He raised his fist and rocked Stenstrom in the right shoulder blade. He dimly felt and heard a number of bones break with the hit. He retched blood. Innocent stood over him. "What's the matter, Gov? Thought you was strong." He reared up and brought his foot down on the back of Stenstrom's leg. His knee collapsed and his thigh bone splintered. "Bring him to me," Chance squealed from below. "Bring him here! Bring him here now!" Clem picked up the shattered Stenstrom and threw him down to the dock, where he fell into the water. 2 Lemuels roughly fished him out. Dripping, he was thrown down on the dock. Chance approached, a buzzing collection of yellow squares. Now that Stenstrom appeared to be hopelessly quelled, Chance compressed back down into man form. His head screen rolled up and descended into his chest. The myriad of yellow squares flipped around, sliding compactly into place. Flesh oozed. Soon, a scrawny, naked Chance stood there. A Clem came to his side and draped a coat over him, which he held shut with his right hand. Overhead, 2 golden crow-like creatures flapped down and landed on his shoulder. The Kestrels. "Good Paymaster," Chance said in a soft, almost tender voice. "Well met. Again." He took a deep breath. "Oh dear, you made a good showing of it, I'll say." He looked around at the piles of fallen Druries. He moved his hands and created a long barb from yellow squares. "Better watch him, Chance," Innocent said. "He was real strong on his ship." "Yes, I recall that." "He tore my hands clean off, didn't he? You say we're robots? You looked rather robotic yourself as we battled. I clearly recall the other fellow who once did the same thing. You may have heard of his name. It was, Darius Jones. I can remember his face plain as day. You say I'm a robot, for I have my memories just like you have yours. The thing of it is, as I recall on the surface, Darius Jones could do a number of remarkable things. However, way down here, under the sea, under the stone, he really couldn't do much of anything except cook, for which he had a delicate touch. Something about the stars gave him power. I'm assuming it's much the same with you too. Oh, too bad." He glanced back at the Seeker. "Clem, take a group to the Seeker. Board her, scour her, and kill any you find. I've a suspicion our friend here has freed our trogs." "What about the crew for the Seeker?" "We'll hook in others. No. This current lot dies. Entiendo?" "Aye." Clem turned to Stenstrom and drove his arm down on his shattered shoulder. "I'll save you a leg or two, Gov. Come on, boys." A group trundled off in a laughing gaggle, spitting on Stenstrom as they passed. Chance smiled. "So then, Paymaster, I must consider this carefully. What can I do to cause you the maximum distress? Huh?" He took several steps forward and Using his yellow barb as a walking stick, he poked Stenstrom once or twice with it. "What say you? Any thoughts?" He hauled back and chopped Stenstrom's right hand off at the wrist. There, a hand for a hand seems only fair, wouldn't you say?" Stenstrom reacted very little. He just lay there, spewing blood. His fingers twitched. Chance continued. "I suppose the gratuitous spectacle of letting you watch your fellows aboard the Seeker die holds sway as the maximum shock value. Then, I think I could do with putting you in the tank and turning you into one of my personal Kalanju slaves. That has great appeal, I must admit, though you shall be of limited use with only one hand." Chance's eyes lit up. Oh, I know. We'll set up a little ring here on the dock and force your fellows to fight each other to the death. That always makes for great sport, doesn't it? You'd be surprised how lifelong friends turn on each other when confronted with such a quaint topic, such as death. Really is quite a thing to see. Chance turned to several Lemuels. "Clear a space for these people. We're gonna have a show." "Clem!" he barked. "Aye," came a response. "On second thought, bring any you find to me." "We're not finding nobody." There. Keep looking, will you?" As several Lemuels began clearing a squared-off space on the dock, the Kestrels took flight. They transformed into two toga-clad females. They stowed up to Stenstrom. One of them picked up his trembling body and closely examined him. "In fells we come we," one of them said. The Kestrel spoke in a gibberish. "I detect he has a destroyed collarbone and shoulder, along with a shattered right knee and femur bone, and he's missing a hand. He is no longer a threat," Chance answered. "That is in way," the Kestrels said in their unusual, incomprehensible manner. The Kestrels mumbled something else. Yes, elders are rather fragile, aren't they?" Chance replied. "Very poor construction." The Kestrel picked up his severed hand and ate it whole, crunching it up and then swallowing. She then began digging about in Stenstrom's broken shoulder. He squirmed slightly in muted agony. The Kestrel found a large piece of shattered bone and began trying to pull it out of the wound. He stifled a pain-clogged shriek. From the tower of the Seeker, a bullet-shaped ship came blasting out. It circled overhead. A Clem fell headless from the ship and splashed into the water. The Westminster! Stenstrom could see Aram's large hat through the front glass. "God damn it! Destroy that vessel!" Chance cried, ducking for cover. Lances of red, green, and blue went up. The tiny ship rose and fell to avoid them. The hatch opened and a figure came leaping down. Steel flashed, and the Kestrel fell, quickly dissolving into amber goo. Stenstrom weakly looked. It was Gwendolyn and her Fedula. She came to Stenstrom's side and tried to pull him up. The other Kestrel reacted badly. "Puddling," she said. She raised her hand and a red cone of light shot out, bathing Gwendolyn in it. She dropped her Fedula and screamed. Chance watched with glee. Burn her up! Gwendolyn dropped to her knees. Then 3 silver daggers entered the Kestrel's arm and chest. 3 marzibles from Stenstrom. He let 3 more fly, getting her in the trunk. The Kestrel stood there looking at the dagger sticking out of her. He shook his good hand and 3 more marzibles appeared. He threw them, piercing the Kestrel 3 times in the forehead. She appeared a bit puzzled and then fell apart into an amber mess. He crawled to Gwendolyn's side. She was slightly smoking. And there was Chance. He reached down and picked them both up by the scruff of the neck. "I really didn't like them anyway. Truly," he said, shaking their bodies. "You have done me a nice favor, actually. Now that lot is gone, we can truly lay some terror on the League. Can't we? We'll raise an army of skinless demons and sail out in ghost ships. We'll hit Catena hard and split the league in two, fading back into the shadows whenever we like. The Westminster came around and dropped in height, skimming the docks and plowing into a host of Druries, flattening some, knocking others into the water. Chance raised up Stenstrom and Gwendolyn and presented them. I have your people here. I'll kill them nice as you please. The Westminster banked away and was struck by a red lance. It smoked and was hit again and then crashed into the water. And with that, we conclude Part 3, Chapter 10. Hallo, boys. So, nasty confrontation with the Drurys on the dock. And it went the only way it could go. Stenstrom put up a good fight, but powerless. Just a man. There's not much he can do with his ints, his dropping the Drurys wholesale. But more came rushing out of the assembly area, some half-made, some naked, some partially dressed. Gwendolyn managed to get 2 coils into the Seeker, but the Seeker hasn't shown any signs of life yet, except for a quick snap-on, snap-off of its sensor. And then the Marians, under cloak up from their belts, made it inside the Seeker. But Stenstrom is in bad shape. He's half dead, basically. He's missing a hand. He's probably bleeding internally. He's got open fractures, bones sticking out. I never said Paymaster Stenstrom is going to survive this, in all honesty. Sometimes an author has to make these decisions. We will find out next week what happens after this horrendous carnage on the dock, where both Stenstrom and Gwendolyn have been captured. Aram's status is unknown. He got shot down with a Drury lance. Part 3, Chapter 11, The Star's Revenge. And we will resolve this issue on the dock and see who gets to make their way home. Until then, this is Ren Presents. I am your host, Ren. Peace out.